Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this monthly in-depth weather forecast for AgSouth and Ag Carolina. I gotta be honest, I have been kind of chomping at the bit to get to talk to all of you because since we last talked, we of course had Major Hurricane Helene come through, and immediately following it, a flash drought. And besides the humanitarian effort spent on cleaning up after that hurricane, we have just seen a wild swing in nearly everything with our weather patterns across the whole of the United States, including what's going on right now. Now, I'm recording for you one day later than I like to do that. I always like to get it done on the last Tuesday of the month. But yesterday I was in, or I still am in Saskatchewan, which was way up here, and I went into one of our potash mines. I was a full kilometer below the Earth's surface, and oh my gosh, it was an amazing experience. But now I'm back to the surface, and I'm staring at these weather patterns, and we've got to talk about it. So listen, I hope you have time. Hope you're caffeinated. What we're going to walk through in this video is all of the near-term volatility that's going to be happening nearly everywhere outside of the southeast. Okay, so we got to think about what all that means. Then I'm going to take you out into the longer range, and I've got every bit of long-range stuff I've got all the way through winter. And I want to talk to you about it, talk about La Niña, lay it all out there. But the first thing we have to talk about is this large southeastern ridge. Can you see the flow going over it? In fact, as the sun rose this morning, yeah, we had some dense fog early here on Wednesday morning, but everything else is going around us. Just got a brand new image in there. That's what that flash was. All the activity is going to be here in the midsection of the United States for the foreseeable future. Now, for many of us, because we are still cleaning up, and we will be cleaning up for several more months, maybe years in places after Hurricane Helene. Well, September 25th, 26th, and 27th, I just made a map to show you what the winds look like. And as you look closely at this, when we're looking at colors here and above, that is where we're talking about hurricane force winds, which did extend the substantial part of Georgia into South Carolina, and the untold disaster that happened up against the Blue Ridge Mountains, which ironically in the last video that I produced for you, we were still several days away from when Helene was going to hit. And I don't know where this is going to land in terms of our most expensive natural disasters, but it's got to be in the top 5, if not one of our most expensive ever. And unfortunately, the impacts on the lives that have been lost and those that have been just completely uprooted and destroyed, this is going to be something that we will be dealing with for a very long time. Now, I want to give you some of the scientific data on it besides the winds, and I want to show you the precipitation. So this was a 7-day map that I made back on October 2nd, looking at total precipitation. And we can just see through parts of Georgia into South Carolina, right up against the Blue Ridge Mountains here, some places over that span of time. I have one spot that was 14.7, but a few of these places hit 20 inches, meaning that in some places this would have been a 1 in 2,000 year event, meaning the statistical odds of having a flooding event of this magnitude in any given year is 1 in 2,000. Now, the farther east you went, the lower the rainfall totals were. But overall, if you put this in perspective of like a statistic, we had some places here that were approaching 1,500% of normal rainfall. I mean, just an incredibly devastating event. Now, I'm still trying to keep up on how the insurance payouts have gone for the crop side of it. I know most of Georgia, I think maybe all of Georgia now, has had a payout from kind of meeting the requirements in the USDA to reach those levels. But I just wanted to give you some stats and some numbers so you could have these just in retrospective, this incredibly devastating system. Now, since then, we've had more of this. That's the flow pattern today. There's a big trough right here, and there's a front right along it, and the winds have been incredibly strong. There's been numerous fires throughout the Midwest. This same pattern in May would have produced explosive storms here all the way down to the southern plains. But see this big ridge over the Mid-Atlantic, over parts of the Carolinas? That's where things have gone. And that means that the month of October, after what happened at the end of September, is record dry in several spots here in Georgia and in South Carolina, with most of North Carolina having a top 10 driest. And after we saw the impacts of Helene leave, we had Milton, which crossed Florida, about 6 hours went across Florida, very powerful hurricane, but most of the rest of the southeast has gone bone dry, as has the northeast, the Midwest, the Great Lakes, the northern plains, the central plains, the southern plains, the southwest, and the northeast. Like the whole region. Soil moisture has been zapped. The Mississippi River at Memphis is down to 10 feet below low stage, meaning that the rains that are coming in this forecast are mission critical to the success of U.S. agriculture on the whole. But the last 30 days, as a percent of normal, single digits across most of AgSouth and Ag Carolina territory. Just nothing falling. And you say, well, why? This is why. We saw the jet stream pattern develop into a kind of a setup where a big ridge formed here. And I'm going to talk about this more later because there's a large, it kind of goes off the map, but a large area of very hot water. Lows have started here. They've kind of found themselves in the Gulf of Alaska, and they've just run over this ridge. And that arrow I drew kind of shows you the flow. And that arrow is what has just completely robbed any chance at getting any more precipitation in. That ridge, that's what has made October, actually most of September and October, as dry as it has been. Now, these kind of ridges at any given time of year, we have to watch out for. We cannot have them in summer. If one set of us in summer here, this is the type of event that would produce record heat and record drought. So we're always watching for where these ridges are going to go. And right now, that ridge did move toward us in the newest forecast. So for the next 15 days, you see the red here? Different map projection, I'm looking at a bigger picture. There's a large ridge of high pressure that's going to live along the east. And that big ridge that I told you was over the warm water, it moved. Everything moved. See that? The ridge that was here moved. The trough that was here moved. There's now a ridge over Europe. I mean, it all shifted to the east by about, 1,500 miles. And we don't know how long it's going to be there because the systems are going to go over the top, dip down here, and run, which means we're going to leave a hole where we're expecting to get very little in terms of precipitation or even wind. I mean, take a look at this forecast for wind gusts over the next 7 days. We're expecting, very little in terms of strong winds. But you get into the southern plains, central plains, Midwest, Great Lakes, Northeast, we're looking at winds that could possibly be gusting on the next two systems at speeds 40 to 50 miles an hour. And right outside my hometown here in Champaign, we had huge field fires yesterday. We've seen them all throughout the Midwest and the plains because of how dry things have been lately. So this is where we land. Now, early this morning, we did have some dense fog advisories out for parts of South Carolina, but all the action is here in this deep developing low that's going to just rip out of the four corner states and move across the country. We've got cold air behind it. These are all freeze warnings, red flag warnings, the risk of fire here. And what we're going to be seeing here is this huge warm sector open up. And I just want to remind you something. For the next 6 months, a very simple thing that you can all do with me, whenever you see temperature patterns like this, find the contrast. That's where the storm system's going to go, right in between the two. So if we stay under a ridge, we don't see major swings in temperature. We don't see any chances of getting heavy precipitation. And that's why over the next 7 days, everything's focused from Texas to the Great Lakes with the heaviest rains in Oklahoma, Kansas, and Missouri. And nearly all of AgSouth territory, Ag Carolina territory is expected to receive almost no precipitation. Now, there'll be some, but it's just dry. Severe weather, plains. Enhanced risk today. I mean, there might be tornadoes here in this part of Kansas later on today. But the bigger picture is all the action's away from us and the cold air's in the west where we're expecting a lot of snow. Rocky Mountains picking it up, Cascades picking up, and maybe even some pockets here in the plains upper Midwest. Can you just see it though? It's all going around this, and the ridge is anchored in this area. So we're not picking up on anything. I mean, watch this next system go through. Ready? I'm just going to play this for you relatively quickly if it'll load for me. Just watch. Comes out of the Rockies. Sorry, I got some relatively slow internet here in Saskatoon, and it just keeps building in the central U.S. That's the ridge. That's the high pressure that's sitting over us. And the system just cranks, and it's deflected. It just cannot get through to our area. There's going to be snow on the backside of this, severe weather out ahead of it, and that ridge is just protecting. So you see the front trying to make its way toward us? The problem is that the high pressure is just going to block it and stop it. And that's why we just don't see much precipitation at all through the next 60 hours and even beyond that. So what we're looking for is anything that could knock that ridge out. So let's let this reload, and I want to show you again what I'm talking about. This is the ridge right here. There it is. And these are the troughs that have to dig through and get into the southeast before making a run up the east coast. And they're just not able to do it. So as I play this forward, see them all running deep into the west and almost just bouncing over the ridge. That's the ridge right there. I'm all the way out to November 7th, by the way. Just keep playing it forward. And even this cutoff low that's going to go to Texas over to Illinois still can't seem to get past it. It may not be until we are fully into week 2, way out there into week 2, that I think there might be a chance at getting us some precipitation. Maybe a chance, but we're going to have to look pretty closely at it. So here's 5 models that are showing you the next 7 days. And you can, by the way, go get this at any time at agweather.com. When you get there, just slide down here on the side, click on 7-day total precip, and you'll be taken to these 5 maps. And this is free. This website is available to you because of partnerships like I have with AgSouth and Ag Carolina. So go use it, please. I hope you find it to be a very useful and insightful tool. what you've got here is I clicked on the WPC. I said, just show me the southeast. And while we're expecting maybe 4, 5, 6 inches of rain, Kansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, everywhere you see zeros here, this is where the WPC is projecting no rainfall in the next 7 days. So we need to take this and try to do something with it. And we're going to first go to the European model to see if it's got any sort of a hint on when there could be a change. So we know the next system goes around us. There it is. The front tries to get over the Appalachian Mountains. Maybe it rains a bit in the northeast, but not too much. That's Friday. That front dies. See, this just doesn't bring the moisture in. The next system's in the west. It starts to gather in the southern plains. Now watch, multiple days starting on Saturday of rainfall down here. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. On Wednesday, next week, if that high can get a bit further to the east, we'll start to bring precipitation through. See, it's trying to move there. Wednesday, November the 6th, 7th, and 8th. That's the 6th, 7th, and 8th, really the 7th. That's the day we're going to be watching. That's, I think, our first significant chance of more widespread rainfall coming back in. And we need it. We cannot, after this huge disaster called Helene, cannot slip into drought. We've got to think about overall our water balance going forward. But that's 9 days out. I'm looking at this. So what have we got? Let's look at some probabilities. This is the chance over the next 10 days of staying under a half inch. Until we get to about day 9, so this would be the 7th and the 8th, we just don't have much of a chance. And as a result, there's a 50 to 70% chance we stay under a half inch. Where's the really wet conditions? They're in the central United States. And as this reloads here, there it is. Big area, 90% chance of an inch. Big area of 2 inches. Big area of 4 inches. That's where all the activity is going to be. But out there at week 2, we start to see some hints. Let's see if I can get this to play. There we go. Thank goodness this is going. That ridge, see how it flattens out there around November 7th and 8th? Man, if we can get that sucker to flatten out, we'll open up the flow and it'll come around. And some of the week 2 forecast models are trying to show that. So if you come to the website, this is agweather.com, and you click on day 8 through 14 precip, you'll see all 4 major models predicting the week 2 precipitation pattern. And they're all 4 looking wetter, a little bit wetter. I think the Europeans probably got the best handle on it. And I'm just saying you're going to have to wait till after the 7th before we get a good chance for getting some moisture in here. Now you notice that down in the Caribbean, the colors keep getting darker, meaning wetter, the farther south you go. And we are keeping an eye right now on an area in the Caribbean that the National Hurricane Center is given a 40% chance of developing. So I want to watch that carefully. And then I want to let you know that right now the probabilities of something developing here, this is all a part of what we call the Caribbean gyre, just an area that gets low pressure in October, November. It's a 50 to 90% chance that something's going to form. But I don't know how far to the north it's going to make it. We really just don't have a lot of evidence yet. So I just want to let you know, keep an eye on the National Hurricane Center as we finish October and go into November, just because of what is here. And in the event that the timing is just right to bring this system into the southeast, if it forms, we just need to let the National Hurricane Center kind of dictate when and where that's going to be. They're going to be the best at it. So keep an eye on this website. Let's talk temperatures before we talk about longer range. No risk of frost. That ridge is going to keep things mild. In fact, we just look at the temperatures. Here's today's highs on Wednesday. That's Thursday. Big change in the Midwest, but we stayed mild. 70s and 80s down here for Friday. There's Saturday, a little bit of cooler weather, kind of a little backdoor front coming through Virginia, North Carolina, but not down in the southeast. Sunday, we rebound back up to normal. Up there to Monday, Tuesday, that's when the next big system is curling its way out of the 4 corner states into the Midwest, mild. So I just don't see it. Day 5 through 10, still mild. Day 10 through 15, we're really not breaking away from that. Now, this doesn't mean you're not going to have a cool day in there. It just means that when you average 5 days in a row, there's just not a lot of evidence that we're going to be able to drop and leave cold air in place. But remember, 7th and 8th of November, we're expecting some wetter conditions. Now, what needs to be watched so carefully with all of this is where the jet stream is going to be in the Pacific, because we're not yet to the point of the year where the Atlantic is set up to drive huge storm systems up the East Coast. So right now I notice that the jet stream in the Atlantic is shifted poleward. And the reason it's up there, you're going to see again in a few minutes, is the very warm water that's living in this area. I'll show it to you on a map in a few moments. But what that seems to be doing is creating a lot of high pressure here. And this is allowing for deeper lows to form, but live mainly more toward Canada. Now, we'll get some of them that dip to the south, but our issue is this. This is actually an extension of the Bermuda High. And so there's questions as to whether or not from mid-November, November the 10th through December the 10th, if we kind of continue to stay on the drier side of average because of that high pressure. You look out there at the precipitation patterns from, again, November 10 to December 10, and we see the influence of that high. Storm systems go over, they come into the west, they eject here, and there's still a little bit of a drier signal. It's not dry, but it's drier than average. I noticed this as well to support it. This is the week 3 and week 4 forecast from the CFSV2. That's the Climate Forecasting System version 2 model. So from the 13th to the 19th, they got near normal, but look where it's wet, west, Midwest. From the 20th to the 26th, they got us drier. Where's it wet? Northwest, Midwest. And I think that seems to be what's going on. The Pacific high seems to be dominating this pattern while we wait on how the Bermuda high and how the Atlantic is going to respond. Now, this is pretty easy to go through the next couple of weeks, right? You now just know that you're watching the 7th, 8th, and 9th for your next chance at precip, but the ridge is going to be a dominant factor in the near future, and we wonder how long it's going to last. So now what I want to do is take you out there longer. Now, we're going to get a little bit nerdy with this, but I'm going to show you several things that are going to be of major interest to me and therefore to you. This is called the MJO. It's a diagram I've shown you many times. It's an 8-phase index we pay attention to, very much like when you watch an index fund in the stock market. It has different phases, different movement, different, high and low points. Well, we've got 8 phases to it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And it all represents different places on the planet. So let me just show you. On an ocean temperature map, here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And what it's tracking is where the biggest storms are. So right now, it just left here, and it's moving there. So big storms are happening here. Now, this is an ocean temperature map, but I'm just pointing this out. What I want you to know is this. When the MJO is making these big sweeps on the diagram, the pattern is not going to get stuck and stagnant for long time periods once we get into winter. Okay, understand that. And I think right now it's going to continue to do that. I think it's going to move. I think we're going to see some actual movement in the MJO. And it's beginning to influence what I think might happen this winter. Now I'm going to show you every model I've got for winter and talk a bit about what I think they mean. We're going to start up with one, again, that's CFSV2. It doesn't just predict the next 4 weeks, it predicts months. This is a 3-month kind of view, sliding window, if you will. November, December, January, February, and so on all the way to April, May, June. So see how it's 6 panels. Look at the winter temperature panel. That is La Niña to the T. Mild across the south, and if you look out there, wetter in the mid-south, dry Florida, dry Texas, dry to California. While I don't buy it fully as exactly what's going to happen, this is what you would draw on a map if you looked at historical numbers and said, what happens when there's a La Niña? I'll prove that to you in just a few seconds here, okay? But I want you to see that model first. Next, let's go, shoot. I'm out of order here, but that's okay. I'm going to come back to this in a few minutes. Let's get back to here. I'll come back to South America in a second. So I keep talking about La Niña, and is La Niña, a dominant factor? Well, there's lots of different ways by which we can measure that. Ocean temperatures are one, but the trade winds are really what tell you what a La Niña is. And the trade winds right now need to be getting stronger. And that's all that this diagram shows. Southern Oscillation Index, yet another index we follow that tells us the behavior of the atmosphere. When we get the value of the SOI way up above 7, the trade winds are cranking. And that's all that a La Niña is. Trade winds crank in this area. And you know what it does? It tends to steal the momentum from the jet stream from the United States because all the biggest storms go there and the momentum pops out into the Pacific Ocean here. If it came out, all the big storms are there, then it pops out here, and then it races across the southern tier of the United States, and we have a really wet and stormy winter. But La Niñas are stealing that from us, and that's really important for us to understand. It's also going to be impactful for South America, which is why I kind of jumped to those other slides. I'll come back to those in a few minutes. But I want to show you something about La Niña. Over here on the left, I know it's kind of small, but this is the official CPC forecast. And they've got right now a 75% chance for November, December, January of having La Niña. This is their forecast that their human forecasters make. But I want you to see this one. This is a statistical algorithm that uses the dynamical models, to understand what the highest probability of an ENSO event is. ENSO is El Nino in the Southern Oscillation, which includes La Niña. And their modeling now says just barely a better chance of La Niña than neutral. And weak La Niñas are different from strong. And we have to have a discussion about what that means. So let's go here. This is a map that shows you a correlation for every La Niña event since 1979 on temperatures, that's on the left, and precipitation on the right. So if you just wanted a blanket answer, I would say, La Niña, risk of dry. Okay, that's what we'd say. Globally, it looks something like this. November, December, we just tend to be drier risk. Okay, but we're questioning, are we really having that type of a La Niña event where we're drier here, drier in southern Brazil, wet in Australia, drier throughout Asia? Like, this is the historical data looking at what happens when there's a La Niña. So I went and I looked at it from this perspective here. What if I just showed you November to December 1st, okay? Not December 1st, but November and December, showing you this first. All of the years when there was just a weak La Niña. Now you don't see as strong of a correlation or an anomaly in terms of precipitation here. Meaning, weak La Niñas don't produce major drought episodes in the southeast. Could you get a little drier? Sure. But here in fall into early winter, I don't think it's as concrete of a thing as we would think otherwise. Now we know that it's been dry since Helene, but going forward, can we break the pattern down, get things moving again? Sure helps if the MJO gets moving, but this is what I want you to see. Now, we're going to compare that to some other models. Sorry, let's go here. This was the newest update that was done by the European model. This is its forecast made in October for November, December, January, and January, February, March. And I want to put down here that if there's a drier risk, it tends to be down in Florida, it tends to be in the southern plains, it tends to be in California. But we tend to have an active bit of the jet stream coming through this area, and that tends to not keep us overly aggressive on the drought building. Now that's what the European model is saying. And by the way, the European model is projecting a very weak La Niña, similar to the analysis I did here. Not this. That's all La Niñas. This is from the National Multi-Model Ensemble. This model is predicting a stronger La Niña. See its drier signal for November, December, January, and for January, February, March. All based entirely on La Niña. And the Climate Prediction Center, which again has a 75% chance of La Niña, is mild November through January. See this? This is precipitation, drier, mild and drier. And then January through March, very mild and dry with all of the wetter signal farther to the north. And I'm just going to say this. If we get into a weak La Niña, I think that this whole area has better chances of winter storm development, meaning more precipitation for the southeast, preventing wintertime drought development based upon what I just showed you here. And so that seems to be the major piece of the puzzle. How strong is this La Niña going to be? And there's a lot of debate over this. I'm going to take you to another website. It's from, let's see here. If I type in Pacific, I bet I'll find it. There it is. This is from the Bureau of Meteorology. In fact, later on today, I'm going to be talking to a large group of Australians, so I'm going to make sure I have this for them as well. This is the predictions of all of the models, big models around the world. So this would be the Australians, the Canadians, the Europeans, the Japanese, the French, the US, and the British, and the average of all of them. I'm going to go straight to January. Only the United States is most aggressive on developing a La Niña. All the other modeling centers are in INSO neutral conditions. So you see why this is so important we talk about this? Because the reality is, I can't say confidently that this La Niña is going to give us the signal that some of the models are saying, which would be drier for us, quite dry. And so I want to show you this. I went out and I looked, understanding that we have a weak La Niña possible, and I made a composite for January to March of all the weak La Niña years. This is precipitation, so drier, wetter, temperatures, colder, warmer. You know, when you average them all out, you don't see a major warm bias. Do I think we're going to be warmer than normal this winter? Yes, I do. But you don't see a major warm bias when you just use these years. And take note of this. There's not a strong drought signal here at all. In fact, even these climate districts that are just on one, this side of average, that's not like they're 3, 4, 5 inches behind normal. So when you are thinking, and I'm thinking about where this is going to go, I just want you to understand that there is not a settled strength yet on where this La Niña is going to be. And I'll be honest, even though you see a big blue stripe here, you want to know what a big La Nina looks like? It looks like that, where everywhere inside of that little line I drew has cold water. And we just don't have one. We're just not there yet. I mean, look, the Southern Oscillation Index isn't even into the blue colors yet. It'd have to be up there for this to be a big La Nina. And this thing's going to peak by Christmas and start to wane. So that's my latest on the long range. And there's other people that are worried about it as well. Now I'm going to come back to this map. They are in South America. If you have not seen, the planting pace in South America ramped up dramatically over the last 2 weeks because it finally rained. Last 30 days, most of this has been in the last 2 weeks. Heavy rains have come into this area. They started planting. Next 7 days, still looks wet there. Drier in southern Brazil, fine. They've been really wet down here, so they could use a week or two of drier weather. But this is the next 7 days, and then this is day 8 through 14. And most of the long-range projections keep this corridor wetter. That means they're going to get into a really good start to the growing season. That's just the way to interpret this. Now, there's a couple things with this. Dryness north and dryness south. So that's dryness in Argentina and dryness in northeastern Brazil. That's very common when there's a La Nina of any strength, to be wet in the middle. But if it stays wet in the middle for a long time, this could be an issue with trying to get the first crop of soybeans out and the second crop of corn in. And I think a lot of folks, if they're looking for a story in the weather for the markets, they're going to be looking at that to be a potential issue, maybe just slowing down the pace at which stuff can get harvested because they are off of normal. In fact, let me just go show you that real quick. I go to the site, IMEA. It's going to be in Portuguese, but I want to make sure that you see this. There we go. Here we are. We go to this and we slide down. There you are. This is the planting progress in Mato Grosso once this loads for soybeans. There it goes. And I'm just going to slide up and take a look. Last Friday, they were here, and this, last Friday, a year ago, they were this far ahead. This year, they were way down here, 35% off of where they were a year ago. That rain came through, they're now 15% off of their planting pace. And by the end of this month, they're probably going to be 80% planted, maybe even more. Last year, they had just settled into a record-setting drought at the end of October through the end of December. This year, all of our projections are for them to be much wetter. So we have to just understand the flip-flop that's happening there as well. Okay, that was a lot today, but I don't get to talk to you again for another few weeks, so I wanted to get you all set up with the big things I'm watching, and we will be talking again in a month to understand if this drought situation has changed at all. So keep an eye on the things I told you to watch, and we'll check in again in a month. Thanks.